What is up, Packers fans? Welcome into Packaday Happy Hour. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. You can find the podcast at Packaday Podcast. Should be here for about an hour or so answering all your amazing questions. Looking forward to that. Of course, we are just 4 hours away from kickoff. So 28 hours away from kickoff, in about 31 and a half hours from deciding if Green Bay is going to Seattle or if the season's over, which would, of course, not be ideal. So it's going to be a crazy 31 and a half hours here, I guess, as we get ready for game day. And then, of course, kickoff 7 p.m. Central Time tomorrow. Cannot wait. This is one of those where just the week drags and drags and drags, even with it being a Saturday night game where you just want this game to be here. So, yeah, I'm not, wishing this game away. I'm enjoying the anticipation, but at the same time, I'm ready for kickoff. I'm ready to get to this one. It has all of the elements of just an incredible Saturday night playoff game. And I cannot wait to watch it. I'm sure you guys are in the same boat. So again, we'll get to all of your questions. Looking forward to that. And we'll kick things off right now. With this being the playoffs and the Packers Bears, do you expect a lot of chippiness? Do the refs let a lot of it go or get flag happy? There's always an extra level of physicality in the playoff games. And a lot of times officials do let a little bit more go in the playoffs. Now, as Justice and I discussed, this specific official is known a little bit more for calling a lot of penalties, especially on defensive backs. So that'll be worth monitoring in this one. But yes, usually there is a little bit more physicality. This is a rivalry. These teams have played each other 3 times in 6 weeks? Yeah, this is going to be an intense matchup. These two teams don't like each other. And I would expect that this is going to be very chippy, very physical. And we're going to see, I would put the over under on, 1.5 personal foul penalties / taunting / whatever. And I bet it hits the over in this one if I had to guess. Hopefully not on Green Bay, but just in general, I'm expecting some chippiness in this one. I was going to mention before I started with the questions, the one key thing that we just found out a little bit ago, Dontavian Wicks has been downgraded to out for this game. So Dontavian Wicks, again, out for this game. It's not ideal, but it's manageable. You would expect, if anything, it might simplify the wide receiver room a little bit and just make it so that, hey, Dobbs, Watson, Reed, and Golden are going to be the ones that are out there. I don't think there's any question about it. There's really no reason to have anybody else out there in this game besides those 4. Now, Jacoby James will be active. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw him, potentially back there as a kick returner. I would assume with maybe Emmanuel Wilson. But as far as wide receivers go, Watson, Dobbs, Reed, Wicks, I don't think they need to activate another one. I don't see why they would do that. If they felt like they needed another wide receiver outside of Jacoby James, if they wanted somebody else, then in that situation, I would probably release Jacoby James and bring up one of the others, whether that be Isaiah Nair, Julian Hicks. I can't imagine it would be Keyshawn Johnson. Yes, they have a Keyshawn Johnson on the team. If you're not familiar, they just picked him up this week. So they could go in a couple different directions, but my assumption would be James would be the 5th, and he might get, again, some opportunities at kick returner, but it really should just be those top 4 wide receivers getting all the reps at wide receiver in that game. Aiden, thank you for the question. We usually feel who the game is pulling for before kickoff. Do you feel this game is pulling for the Packers? I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, Aiden. I just feel like this is a true coin flip. I feel like to me, this feels very even. I don't feel like there's one way that this is going one way or the other. And I think that's what makes this so anticipated, is just exactly how this game feels right now, where it could go in pretty much, again, any direction that you could possibly imagine. So I don't have a feel for that. I hope you're right that this is one that's trending in the Packers direction. But as of right now, I think this is about as close of a game in a matchup as you could possibly get. Could Caleb get more careless in this game with first-time playoff pressure? Sure, absolutely. There's always that possibility. Ben Johnson coaching in a playoff game as a head coach for the first time. This Bears team, they have players who have been there before. Joe Thuney, a great example of that. Jonah Jackson, etc. But overall, this is a pretty inexperienced playoff team for Chicago. Now, that's not the be-all, end-all. Green Bay, when they had the youngest team in the league, and a lot of that team who had not been to the playoffs before in 2023 went into Dallas in that opening game and just, absolutely, blew them out early in that game. So it could play a factor. Hopefully it does. but it's not a guarantee by any stretch of the imagination. Happy Friday, Andy. Congrats to John Eric Sullivan on the GM gig. Always enjoyed his responses during the draft. I hope he can manage the move from Green Bay to Miami. Yeah, I'm sure he'll find a way to manage that just fine. It is always, I'm sure, stressful when you're, transplant. He's been here since 2003. Like, he and his family have been here for, 22, 23 years. And maybe even before that. I don't know where they were beforehand, but they've been here for a very long time within the Packers organization. So I'm sure there's still some level of, stress of taking your family and moving them out of an area that you've been for over 2 decades. And, if all of a sudden tomorrow, after spending for me my entire life in Green Bay, or in Wisconsin, at least, spent a little bit of time in Madison and Oshkosh and things like that, but in Wisconsin, and know Green Bay like the back of my hand. If tomorrow I was all of a sudden moving the entire family to Miami, there would be a level of stress with that, but I could definitely deal with it a little bit better if I was handed the, general manager job of the Miami Dolphins. I'll say that. Do you think that makes Hafley, Stenovich, and or Malik as more likely candidates for Miami? It certainly doesn't hurt, from if they're looking to go to Miami, or, as far as, conjecture standpoint goes, but we just don't know. John Eric Sullivan could not have relationships with those people, or could have seen them up close and say, yeah, that's not who I want to be my head coach or coordinator or quarterback, etc. It's really difficult to know the dynamics that go into that. But it absolutely could. I think the other thing that's worth noting is, if the Packers do get eliminated this weekend, it could really give Matt LaFleur another level of, just being able to say, of just leverage, I guess, and being able to say, pay me or I'll go to Miami. And I'm sure John Eric Sullivan would absolutely love to have Matt LaFleur in Miami. And if that's the case, if Green Bay's like, no, we're not going to give you an extension, and the Dolphins are willing to pay $15+ million per year to Matt down in Miami, and Matt's like, hey, give me an extension, or let me go to Miami, like that gets interesting. So it does add a little bit of leverage to Matt in contract negotiations this offseason, one way or the other. Now, obviously, if they go on a run and Miami fills a position, then he doesn't have it. But if they go on a run, he's got leverage because they went on a run. So either way, this is probably not the worst thing for Matt LaFleur. Saw John Eric Sullivan got the GM job for Miami. Would we get a comp pick for that? No comp pick for that. No comp pick, unfortunately. Troy Fox, who decides the budget for coaching? Is that policy? Is there a separate financing person for employees who have a similar role as Russ Ball does for the players? Yeah, I would assume that ultimately is an ed policy decision. And, how much money, maybe the board of directors gets involved in that. And I'm sure Russ Ball, from an overall financing standpoint, has some aspect of that as well. But I would assume that ed policy, that final discussion and decision comes down to him. Do you expect the Packers to go for it on 4th down and take the points in this game? Not converting would be huge momentum swings along with the weather conditions. It's a really interesting one. What I talked about on the radio today is, I just want to see a through line throughout the game. Against Minnesota, the Vikings, in their first matchup, Green Bay decided to take an extremely conservative approach in that game. It was the right decision. They stuck with that conservative approach the entirety of the game. They didn't get greedy at any point. They punted it away, knowing that Minnesota's offense was never really going to be able to get going, and they beat Minnesota handily. I think it was a week later, or the week before, one of the two, and it was the Lions on Thanksgiving. And Green Bay went ultra aggressive in that game, constantly going for it on 4th down, understanding that they were probably going to need points in that game. There's never a perfect answer as to whether or not you should go, all aggressive or all conservative, but I just want to see a consistent game plan. Hey, our game plan is to be conservative, or our game plan is to be aggressive. It seems like when Matt maybe gets a little bit more seat of his pants and making decisions in the moment, where things get a little bit more wonky, if you will. So I just want to see consistency throughout the game. If it's me, my tendency would be aggressive. However, what I will say is that I don't know, like similar to, the Chicago games earlier, the second one especially, where they've got 5 red zone trips and they only get, 6 points. You don't want having, 3 of those drives that don't end up in points at all. So I could see a world in which he does take points, but for me, I'm leaning more towards going for it and being aggressive on 4th down in this game. All right, we'll come back to my endless void. I want to get to these super chats quick. Marcus, thank you so much for becoming a brand new Packaday podcast YouTube member. Appreciate that a ton. The Dakota Fire says, how crucial is a lead and Jacobs with the run? I think both of these teams I mean, it's a obvious statement, but both of these teams would love to play from ahead. I mean, would absolutely love to play from ahead. And I think both these teams are going to feel like they can run and lean on their run game to sort of lean on their opponent once they get that lead to kind of finish off the game. I think if you're playing from behind, you're literally going uphill in this game. So yeah, both of these teams are going to want to do everything they can to get out to an early lead and not get behind and not have to, sort of reach for points by having to constantly pass the ball. So yeah, the leader throughout this one is going to have a huge advantage. But as we saw with Chicago last game, just because you have a lead towards the end and it feels insurmountable doesn't mean it is. And you're going to have to play 60 minutes to get through this one. 16 quarters, 2010 America's game vibes. One quarter at a time, one game at a time. Let's take this thing home. I'll gladly go in that direction, Brian, with you, and hope that Green Bay can find a way to just put this together and have a magical run. Packers super fan, thank you for the super chat. I have no interest in trading 48-year-old Matt LaFleur for 63-year-old John Harbaugh, excuse me. That would be a big step back, in my opinion. Yeah, I just think these things are always very funny to me because, if you're saying, well, I don't like Matt because it's been good, but he hasn't shown the ability to get to a Super Bowl over the last 6-7 years since Matt's been here. He's John Harbaugh's in the same situation. In fact, for a longer period of time. And I get John's got a Super Bowl on his Super Bowl ring or whatever, right? I think he does, right? He has one with Baltimore. Pretty sure, right? Yeah, Super Bowl champion. He's got one Super Bowl ring. I get he's got one, but overall, like you're running into the same situation where Baltimore had to get rid of him because it's been, playoffs, or this year not playoffs, but he hasn't been able to elevate the team. And I just think in that situation, you probably end up with a new defense. Like he's already said he wants his own guys. Like he's going to bring in his own coaching staff, which means bye-bye Jeff Hafley, which means bye-bye, to this offense, which is, Jordan Love's been extremely successful in. Lamar Jackson had a really down year this year, though I feel really good that the special teams would be better with John Harbaugh, but I don't know that I'm willing to take a hit. That defense in Baltimore was god-awful last year. I don't know that I'm willing to take a hit on offense and defense for John Harbaugh and just to be special teams to be better. I think it would be an absurd move as well. If all of a sudden they fired Matt LaFleur, like that was the decision, all right, well, then it becomes different because I don't think it's a great coaching search right now. There's not a lot of great options out there. So if at that point you want to discuss John Harbaugh, that's fine. But that's again why I just don't have any real interest in moving on from Matt at this point. I just think he's like, if Matt were on the open market, now you're an expansion team, all right? Screw the Packers for a second. You're the Dolphins. If you're an expansion team, if all these coaches that are out there, Mike McDaniel and Kevin Stefanski and all the unknowns and John Harbaugh and all those coaches, Mike McCarthy and Matt LaFleur were added to that list, and all of the teams had their first choice, I bet 90% of them, maybe there's one that wouldn't. I bet almost everyone would have Matt on the top of their list. If it was a expansion team and they could get Matt, they'd be thrilled. So I get that we want more from this team. We want more from Matt. I understand that, but it also shouldn't make it so that you do something that potentially makes it worse in the short and the long run. It feels to me almost like, kind of what the Badgers did with Paul Chryst. And again, I understood the Chryst move to some extent at the time, but like, oh, let's move on from this really good coach because we need something better. And then you're, in a way worse position just a couple of years later. And, you could make the argument with the Bucks too. And I'll be fair on that one. I was ready to move on from Coach Budenholzer. I thought they needed something new, but they've now had two god-awful coaches since Mike Budenholzer. Now, to be fair, Mike Budenholzer's also been fired since then, right? I think he had an opportunity last year with Phoenix, was it? But either way, sometimes you end up in a worse situation by moving on. And it's not that can't scare you. If it's time to move on, it's time to move on. But I don't see it right now. And I'd be pretty surprised and stunned still if Green Bay went in that direction. Yeah, again, don't have any interest in the Most Hated Chicago, and I appreciate the super chat, but I don't have an interest in trading Matt or firing Matt or anything. People can say that that's whatever, but it just to me seems like an extremely stupid move. And as I've talked about on a million different occasions, I understand the maybe hesitation on giving him a huge contract extension. That's a fair argument to me. And that's what makes this conversation, I think, a little bit more unique. But that's a fair one. But just to move on, to trade, to fire, I think that is insane talk at this point. Especially, again, we're a day away from, like, we're 27 hours away from a Packers playoff game. Like, that should be the focus and the intent, attention on this one. And for some reason, this topic just keeps coming up. I don't have a wrestling. I have a football helmet I wore on the radio today, so I do have that next to me. But yeah, just casual today. We're still calm today. Tomorrow we might get the Godzilla sweatshirt, the Packers Godzilla sweatshirt roaming. We're 1-0 with the Packers Godzilla sweatshirt, so might have to bring that one to the dance tomorrow. See if we can pick up a win with the Packers Godzilla sweatshirt. My balls itch. Good to see you, my friend. Do you think Rashan Gary has an undisclosed injury similar to Kenny Clark that is throwing off his performance? Sleeper picks: Jacobs 150 yards, Watson a touchdown, Jacobs a touchdown. It is time. Let's start with the first part. The coaching staff's been asked about that, and they say no. Gary said no. He's not showing up on the injury report at all. If he does, Green Bay can get fined for it, for not putting him on the injury report. So I would say no. I would say no. I don't think that there is. Are all the players, a little bit hurt to some extent? Sure. But to the point where he's been as ineffective as he's been, no, I don't think anything like that. I love those sleeper picks. And what a segue, my balls itch, to get to our sleeper picks for this one. Let me remove your comments quick, and let's get to our sleeper picks. So we're going Monday Night Football. We're going, again, Aaron Rodgers' potential last game. We've got Pittsburgh and Houston. We got the free pick. You love the free pick. CJ Stroud, more than 1.5 passing yard. Kenneth Gainwell, more than 33.5 receiving yards. And Jalen Warren, more than 1.5 receptions. That's my expectation for this one. You can listen to me and go with what I have to say, or you can choose your own adventure and go in your own direction, which is what I would usually advise. But I'm excited for this one. I like these picks. Of course, you can get your picks in over at Sleeper. You can also get a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code Packaday. Again, a 100% match up to $100 by utilizing code Packaday. See Sleeper for details. Terms and conditions apply. Available in over 25 states nationwide. So what are you waiting for? Get your picks in for tomorrow, for Sunday, for Monday. There's not many of these left. So make sure to take advantage of that offer and get those Sleeper picks in for this weekend. It's going to be a absolute ton of fun. All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. Troy Fox, it's been a great 24 months. Thanks for all you do, Troy. I really appreciate that. Glad that I get to do it. Wouldn't want to be doing anything else. And it's going to be a long weekend. Tomorrow should be fun. And then, we've got the early game. I'm going to be doing the pregame show, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. And then we've got the game halftime show. I'm going to be on the Luiges Twitter channel. And then in the post-game show, I'll be doing immediately following the game. And then I'll do the rewatch and put all my notes together, record the podcast, upload Camille's video, which I'm assuming she'll do tomorrow, and do all of that. And then record the episode for Sunday morning. By the time that all is said and done, it's probably going to be about 6:30 in the morning. My son has a basketball game at 8 in the morning that I'm going to be attending. So we're going to be on very minimal sleep. But hopefully the adrenaline of a Packers win is going to get me through it. I can't wait. I'm looking forward to it. And then, by the way, we've got 3 more basketball games after that first one and a soccer game after that. So it's going to be a crazy Saturday. And then, by the way, 3 playoff games in the NFL right back to back after. And then another podcast to do for Monday. And then, maybe we can get some sleep on Monday. But I'll be recording with Mike Wall on Monday and going on Marcus Eversall's radio show. And doing all of that sort of stuff. Going on Let's Talk Football with Aaron Nagler, because we're all going to be talking about a big Packers win over the Bears. So adrenaline is going to be real over the next few days. I'm going to try to catch up on sleep as much as I can between now and the pregame show. Probably between now and really kickoff of the first game tomorrow. All right, David. I'm willing to gamble my emotional stability for this Saturday night either way. And if needed, remind Bears fans we beat them en route to Super Bowl XLV. That's forever. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get after it. As Justice Mosqueda perfectly said this week, we're all in, willing to die for this. Like let's take the Bears to hell with us. I'm all in. I'm all in. Everything Justice had to say, I cannot echo it enough. I just can't wait for this one. Absolutely cannot wait. The Adventures of John, thank you for the super chat. Trade a guaranteed Packers win for another OT Seattle loss? No. Nope. Not willing to make those sort of deals. I will play this out and I will take whatever pain and punishment, but I'm not limiting the Packers this year by guaranteeing a win this week. I will take it on its own volition. I want the Packers to go and win on their own. I'm not making any deals with the devil. Packers are going to go win this one, and then we'll go and repay Seattle for 2014 and for the Fail Mary. And then we're going to get revenge on either San Fran or Philly right after that in the championship game. And then you know what? We might as well take some revenge on Denver for earlier this year and Super Bowl 32 while we're at it. It's revenge tour time, baby, starting with this week against Chicago. And then we're going to go right through this thing. And all those unlucky, crappy plays that we've had through all of those games, 4th and 26, the Terrell Owens play, Jerry Rice's fumble, non-fumble, we're making up for it in one fell swoop. And we're going right to the Super Bowl, winning that Super Bowl against Denver. Jordan Love's going to do the John Elway spinneroonie in midair. We're exercising all the demons. So no deal with the devil, Adventures of John. We've got work to do, and we're going to do it all in the next month and a half or so. All right. My Endless Void. Find it insane that there is a subset of Packers fans who will call for Matt LaFleur's job, but in the same breath say we should consider hiring Harbaugh for head coach. It's a real weird world out there, my Endless Void. It's a weird world. And John Harbaugh's a good coach. Don't get me wrong. I don't even need to disparage John Harbaugh. I just think, again, if you put all these coaches in a line for an expansion team or any of the other non-Packers team, Matt LaFleur is right to the head of that list if he's a free agent at the end of this. And I think Green Bay is, cutting off its nose to spite its face if they go in that direction. And we'll see what, agreement they come to, if that's what they go to. Because again, don't want the lame duck year, but I'm interested to see how this all goes down, but hopefully it starts with a big win in Chicago and we can just put this entire conversation to rest. Do I think this is the biggest game Matt LaFleur, Jordan Love have ever been a part of as a member of the Green Bay Packers together? No, the 49ers game was better. They had the opportunity to go to an NFC championship game if they won that game. So those two together, that one's a bigger game, but this is probably the second biggest. This is the second biggest. Hearing your ridiculous comments the other day about not liking food with vinegar in it. Andy, what are you doing? Vinegar chips are all awful. Yes, and all olives are terrible. I will say this. I hate vinegar with a passion, anything vinegar based. I hate raspberries. Raspberry vinaigrette is fantastic. Try making sense of that. I can't. I have no idea how, but I guess two wrongs made a right. Raspberries gross, vinegar gross, raspberry vinaigrette unbelievable. So there, that is the one vinegar-based thing that I like, and I think the only one. The Packers called and offered you a choice to be the head coach or GM. Oh, it's GM. I would be a terrible coach. I'd be a terrible, probably be a terrible GM too, but I'd be a terrible coach. I think I'm naive and stupid enough to think I could do a really good job as a GM, even if I probably couldn't. But I would have the confidence of a billion sons if I went into that job and be like, let's go. We're starting right away. I actually legitimately think that I could at least hang. Not saying I'd be better than Goody. I'd probably be the 32nd best GM in the league, but I would actually be competent enough to know what I was doing and to lean on smart scouts and things like that and not just try to Jerry Jones the thing. I actually think, again, I could be mostly competent doing that. Maybe even good if I got lucky. But if I would be a terrible coach, I'd be a terrible, terrible head coach. Marcus, thank you again. All right, Ian. If the Packers were fully healthy, do you think they'd be able to win more than 3 games with Clayton Tune as a starter? No, I don't think so. I think that would be a limiting factor. Fully healthy with Clayton Tune, I think, is a 1 or 2 win team. That'd be my guess. I think the thing being slept on is Jacobs being as healthy as he's been since the Giants game. The Packers run game could be something not enough people are seeing as a key to this game. Your thought? I totally agree. I think the run games in this one are of the utmost importance. Turnovers 1A, and then probably run games after that. How Green Bay does against Chicago's run game is, of course, insanely important. And then can Green Bay get their run game going against the Bears defensive front that allows over 5 yards per carry? And Josh Jacobs is healthy. We saw what Josh Jacobs tried to do against Philly last year and put the team on his back as much as he could. I expect Josh Jacobs to have a really good performance in this game. And if he does, I really, really like Green Bay's chances. Spaceman Hero. Christian Watson seemed to often break away from the coverage under CJ Gardner-Johnson this year. Is it actually a positive or negative? I've thought the same thing, Spaceman Hero. In fact, I joked last game when the Packers were in Chicago, and on that touchdown play, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson went down with an injury, and I tweeted out, I said, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson just looked like he went out with an injury, which could be a huge loss for Green Bay. And a couple of people are like, you mean the Packers? Or you mean the Bears? I'm like, no, I mean Green Bay. Like, he was not even low-key. He was obviously bad against the Packers in those matchups. So yeah, having Kyler Gordon out there and not Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I actually think can be detrimental. Look, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson does have weird ways of coming up with big plays and big games and just being involved in stuff. So you never know, but my gut says Green Bay is going to miss Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in this one. Or I guess CJ Gardner-Johnson now. John Kramer, Aaron was so good in the playoffs because he killed in situational football. Jordan isn't quite there, but I think he's about ready to take that next step. I mean, it just depends on what Aaron and what Jordan were talking about. Jordan against Dallas was one of the most unbelievable playoff performances I've ever seen. Aaron against San Francisco in that divisional round game couldn't do crap and threw into triple coverage to Devontae Adams at the end of that game. So I just think sometimes we get, rose-colored glasses for depending on what topic we want to talk about. I would argue that if Aaron looks back at his playoff career, especially some of the games, kind of post Super Bowl run, that he's going to wish he could have some of those games back. And, Jordan, of course, had that great game in Dallas. I think if you ask him about the Philly game or the San Francisco game, he would very much like those two back. So it just depends. I think we're going to get really good Jordan Love in this game, but time will tell, and we're going to have to kind of wait and see. You see that Whalen led the league in gross punt average, the first Packer to ever do that, only the third cold weather team punter to do so this century. Guy should be an all pro. John, we are on the same page. He absolutely should be an all pro, and was just an absolutely unbelievable season for him. The Packers and Steelers aren't done. Wait. If the Packers and Steelers both don't win the Super Bowl, who do you want to see win? Okay, so I'm assuming this means if the Packers and Steelers can't win the Super Bowl, who do I want to see win? I think Jacksonville would be fun. Houston would be an interesting story. It's probably just one of the AFC teams. I mean, Buffalo would legitimately be a good story as well with all that they've kind of had to go through. I mean, New England's won it a lot, but that's a completely new team, and Drake May and some of those players are fun. There's nobody in the NFC. I mean, Carolina would be a hell of a story, but I can't imagine that that's going to happen. So I'll go Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville would be a really fun ride. Andy, can you put a letter grade on our main coaches? I'd probably give a B to Matt. I'd probably give a B to Jeff Hafley, and I'd probably give a D+ to Bisaccia, maybe a C-, D+ to Bisaccia, and then I think just straight B's to Matt and Half at this point. I don't think there's anything the Packers did defensively this year, even with Micah Parsons, where I was like, except maybe like those first couple games, where I'm like, holy crap, this is an unbelievable defense that is just tearing through the league. And on offense, I thought there was a lot of good moments, but you also had the Cleveland game, you had a 7-point performance against Philly, you had the Carolina game, and I think just overall, while you got through some stuff with injuries, you also ended on a 4-game losing streak, and again had some of those bad losses a little bit early in the year. So I think B for Matt, B for Jeff, C-, D+ for Rich. Hafley and Stenavich end up in Miami. Who do you see replacing them? I think McDaniel could be fun for the offense. I would be pretty shocked if McDaniel ends up in Green Bay. I'd be very shocked. The reason I say that is Matt's not giving up play calling. And so if Matt's here, I don't think McDaniel would want to take a job in Green Bay unless he could be the play caller. And I just really think that, one of Matt's superpowers is his ability to be a good play caller, or at least he's good enough at it where you'd want to keep it. And so for that reason, I don't see McDaniel, in Green Bay. I would assume, and just kind of based on experience, that if Steno is gone, you'd probably be looking at Luke Getsy, Nathaniel Hackett, or maybe even Sean Mannion as guys that would potentially step into that role as offensive coordinator. Those would be my first guesses. As far as Hafley, Raheem Morris would probably go, and I'm not saying who I would want, but who I would expect. Raheem Morris, I think, would go to the top of that list. I would almost expect him to be the defensive coordinator if Hafley were to leave, assuming Morris doesn't get a head coaching job elsewhere. And then the other name I would keep an eye on would be Christian Parker from Philadelphia, who was heavily involved in their coaching or their defensive coordinator search last time. And then on top of that, He's under Fangio. That Philly defense has been really good under Fangio. He's got Packers experience. I think Christian Parker would be the other one. So Christian Parker and Raheem Morris would probably be the two I'd put at the top of the list for defensive coordinator. And then you'd have to look at Ansley as well, like Derek Ansley, and then potentially Cunningham on the defensive line as well. But I would think that Raheem Morris and Christian Parker would be the two top ones. The draft consensus was that 83 was a gadget guy, but Packers fear guys said they thought the Packers would use him as a real wide receiver. However, he did mostly gadget stuff this year. Think that changes. That's going to be up to Savion Williams. Savion Williams just has to evolve his game. He needs to become a better route runner, a little bit more of a well-rounded wide receiver. There's no doubt to me that they want to involve him more as a pure wide receiver. And I think he'll get more opportunities for that next year. He'll go into the season as the true number 5. Some form of Watson, Reed, and Watson, Reed are going to be the top 2. Wicks and Golden in some order are going to be 3 and 4. Savion will be 5, and then we'll see what they kind of have after that. But I think they're going to try to evolve his game as much as possible in the offseason. Reasons to be optimistic for the game tomorrow with the injuries and the weather forecast. I'm not feeling very hopeful. Would feel a lot better if the game was in a dome. Yeah, Green Bay's just outplayed them twice in 2 games so far. They're the better team. They have the better roster. They're more experienced. I think they have the better coach. They certainly have the better quarterback. And I actually think they have the better defense, even though their defense isn't playing great. I still think Chicago's is actually worse. And so there's a lot of things going for Green Bay in this game. And they just have to play their best brand of football. It doesn't even have to be their best, but they just can't shoot themselves in the foot. Green Bay to me is still playing themselves more than Chicago in this game. If Green Bay comes out and has all their self-inflicted mistakes and turnovers and special teams errors and miscues, Chicago's just going to win. And I would be willing to bet you almost anything. If Green Bay plays a clean brand of football, Chicago's not going to beat them. So this to me ultimately still comes down more to Green Bay versus Green Bay than it does Green Bay versus Chicago. All right. Just want to make sure I didn't have any more super chats there. I missed the ball hawking days of 2000s, early 2010s. Green Bay wins not only Saturday, but wins it all if we, by a miracle, get back to it. They're due for turnovers, but that doesn't get you a whole heck of a lot. They have to do a much better job of turning over the Bears and just the teams that they play moving forward. If they continue to move forward in this postseason, they got to win the turnover battles. Like defensively, they're just not good enough to hold up for the 60-minute game. They've got to find a way to get their hands on the football, whether that be via fumble or interception or tip ball, or I don't care. They've got to find a way to get some turnovers in this game. Who's the biggest X factor on the Packers D to help them do a great job against the Bears offense and maybe a BJ Raji pick 6? Well, you're in the right direction at the position. I need something from this defensive tackle group. I need something. It doesn't have to be great. Doesn't have to be all pro. Doesn't have to be really good. Doesn't even maybe need to be good. I need solid, average defensive tackle play in this game. It can't be bad, and it can't be really, really bad. And I think it could be really, really bad. That's, to me, the biggest reason for pessimism in this game. I think the linebackers will be fine. I think the edges will be fine. I think the safeties will be fine. I think the corners will be fine. But I'm extremely, extremely worried about the interior defensive line. Colby Wooden has done as much as you could ask of him as a defensive tackle that should be like a number 3 defensive tackle that plays like 30 snaps a game, playing like 50, 60 snaps a game as your number 1 defensive tackle. He's doing what he can. He's holding up as best as he can, but he's not that guy, and he can't do it all. And Carl Brooks has been a big time liability. Chicago, Baltimore, especially Baltimore, they've taken 2 offensive linemen, just double teamed Carl Brooks right away. And Carl Brooks can't hold up against that. It's just it's a weakness immediately on the defensive line when teams see it, and they can double him, get him off his spot. And it's like a free 3 to 4 yards. And then if you're Derrick Henry, it's a free like 9 yards, and it makes it really, really difficult. So to me, the big X factors in this game are Colby Wooden, Carl Brooks, Warren Brinson, Nasir Stackhouse, Jonathan Ford. These are the players that really, really need to step up in this game for Green Bay to be successful. If Chicago's around 120 or fewer rushing yards in this game, Green Bay's got a really good chance to win. If it's up in the 180s or above, or certainly 300 or above like Baltimore was, they're just dead on arrival. I don't think they can win that game. LFG, Derek, thank you so much for being here. I think the week of rest will be the difference maker in us winning. Green Bay is basically coming off a bye while Chicago starters played 6 days ago. I think that's a big deal. think it's a big deal as well. Now we can argue rest versus rust, but I think it's an advantage for Green Bay. I also think the adrenaline is going to take both these teams through the game, and it's a playoff game, and you're not even feeling that stuff. I think once the game kicks off, some of those storylines and narratives kind of go out the window. But if there is an advantage to be had there, I do think it's advantage for Green Bay. How much of a difference, if at all, do you think the Dennis Allen calls this game with a healthy Gordon in the slot and no CJG or CGJ? I don't think it's that different, to be honest. This ultimately comes down to the fact that Chicago's struggled to stop the run. They cannot get any pressure, and they've been brutal when they've blitzed. And you're in no man's land when you're Dennis Allen of, okay, I can't blitz because if I do, I'm getting nuked, and I can't give Christian Watson and Jaden Reed and these guys a bunch of big explosive plays. But if I do not blitz, I can't get home, and Jordan Love's going to have all day to throw, and he also just torches people if we do that, and I can't stop the run. So I think the first thing for Chicago is, if I'm Dennis Allen, is we got to stop the run game and Josh Jacobs. We cannot allow that to get going. Because if we allow that to get going, we've got nothing. We've got nothing. We can't stop the pass. We can't stop the run. We can't blitz. We're just screwed. So we got to stop the run first. And then from there, you try to figure out a plan against Jordan Love. But I just think he's in a little bit of no man's land, similar to kind of what Jeff Affley's going through right now with no Micah Parsons and no pass rush on his side of the ball. How awesome would it be for Golden's first touchdown to be against the Bears in the playoffs? 34-20, Packers tomorrow. Go Pack, go. Let's do it. Let's do it. I mean, I think I've seen somebody post a Golden first touchdown from week 1 through this game. So let's just keep it rolling. Let's keep it rolling. And hopefully this week can be the week. I know sometimes brain drain hits coaching staffs after coordinators raid staffs. Could the same thing happen with the JES hiring in Miami? It could. Absolutely. I think this is always tough is we don't know, what's going on behind the scenes of who's doing a great job with scouting and who's not and things like that. We really have no idea. But yeah, I mean, we've seen it in the past with Reggie McKenzie and with John Schneider and with who is the other one? John Dorsey. And Elliot Wolf. We've seen a lot of really smart minds, Alonzo Highsmith, really smart minds in Green Bay that have left, and it absolutely hurts Green Bay. Absolutely hurts them. So yeah, this could be something that hurts, but they've got a lot of really smart, people in that, front office that I think are, ready and able to step up into that void and fill the void. But yeah, it's going to be a difficult challenge. And if they lose more people, whether that be in the front office staff or the coaching staff, et cetera, from John Eric Sullivan going to Miami, it absolutely could hurt Green Bay. How big of a problem is Wicks not playing going to be? I don't think it's huge. It's not it's not advantageous. You'd certainly like him to play, but you're not going into this game with Dobbs, Reed, Watson, and Golden and being like, oh, how are we going to generate plays? Like they've got a really strong 4-man wide receiver room, as strong as you could want still, and they're going to be just fine. Would you like Wicks? Yes, but I think if anything, it might just simplify. It might simplify their 4-man receiver room a little bit more, where you're getting the same guys out there over and over and over again, where those guys can stay ingrained in the game. They still have guys that they can rotate in when needed. But I think it actually, I'm not going to spin it to say it's a good thing, but I don't think it's going to really be a huge factor for Green Bay. Also, as a Wisconsin sports fan, if Matt LaFleur gets fired before Luke Fickell or Doc Rivers, I might crash out. It is really crazy. I mean, certainly what Pat Murphy's doing in Milwaukee is probably the best coaching / managing job in the state. But yeah, Matt LaFleur is second, and then the other ones are, well below at the moment. And yeah, Fickell and Doc Rivers still being here while Matt LaFleur gets fired would be a weird Wisconsin, just sort of mind, what. With a history of limited possessions in the last 2 games, do you think converting 4th downs would be the difference in this game? We, like we talked about earlier, we need to see how Matt's going to manage this game. If it's going for it on 4th down or if it's punting the ball away, I would assume Chicago is going to be ultra aggressive. That's just in Ben Johnson's nature. I think 3rd and 4th down defense for both of these teams is going to be huge, as it always is. But yeah, I expect a lot of point production, or at least the opportunity to have a lot of point production. And if you're failing on 3rd and long or 4th downs, and you have to either punt the ball away or turn it over on downs, those are the same basically as turnovers. So yeah, I think they could play a major factor in this game. What are the drawbacks of using PFF grades as a measuring stick for player evaluations? It's the same thing that I'll say for my grades. And I go in painstaking detail to go through the week and grade every player and every play. it's an interpretation of what you're seeing on the field. It's never 100% truth. It's never, meaning like you can never know exactly what's happening. There are plays where I simply can't grade because I don't know whose assignment something was. And there are, there's biases that, you don't even know exist sometimes. I think I'm as unbiased as possible, but I'm sure things probably sneak in without me even knowing it from time to time. And so I think for me, what I love doing about it, the grade to me even doesn't matter. It's so much as just what I see on film. And the grade is a fun, like it started just as a way for me of kind of tracking of who I thought was doing well and who I didn't think was doing well or who was doing poorly. And throughout the course of time, especially with my grades, I can't speak to PFFs. I haven't correlated it, but you can tell the guys that have done really well in my grades have gone on to contract extensions and, lucrative, contracts and things like that. The guys that haven't have more often than not been cut, released, traded. Clinton Dix was a great example of that as somebody I was on really early of like, they're just not playing good football and nobody wanted to believe me. He's an all-pro. He's a Pro Bowler. And I'm like, no, he's kind of sucks. And, ultimately gets traded away. And then Washington fans want to tell me like, no, he's actually really good. I'm like, you enjoy it. Go have fun. Then they realize that he's not good. And then Chicago fans try to say he's going to be better than Adrian Amos. And I said, have fun with that. Then they quickly realized, oh yeah, he's not good. So I just think with anything, take it with a grain of salt. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. But I do think where your best way to utilize PFF grades or my grades, right, is there are certain ones, Micah Parsons, okay? Micah Parsons, high PFF grade, high Andy grade, looks awesome every single time we see him on Sunday. Passes the eye test, right? No question about it. Darian Kennard. Darian Kennard's an interesting one. Yeah, I think he's top 10 in PFF's grades on offense. He's my lowest graded offensive player. And your mileage may vary of what you think of Darian Kennard. There is a gap there, right? There's an interesting space of like, oh, PFF likes him, Andy doesn't. And you might lie somewhere in the middle. That to me is more of a fun, like, all right, let me go and watch him a little bit more and see who I agree with, who I disagree with. There could be other ones. I know Xavier McKinney, PFF and I both love this year. Other fans are like, I don't think he's having that good of a year. Well, that's a good one then to kind of go study on your own and say, I don't think he's playing well. PFF and Andy say he's playing great. All right, why is that? Where's the disconnect? Maybe I should go watch him closer and again, maybe close that gap. That's why I love doing it, is when, again, to me, maybe there's a narrative out there of like Rashan Gary. Rashan Gary sucks. Cut him, get rid of him. PFF has him as a slightly above average player. I have him as a slightly above average player. There's a disconnect there. And I think those are fun things to look at closer. And knowing that there's no perfect answer, there's no guaranteed knowledge. Nobody knows everything. But I think when there's more of like a disconnect between the common, thought process of where a player's at, PFF, myself, whatever, I think that's where those spaces in between are really, really fun to explore. All right, Killer Kenny, how did Gary go against the run in Baltimore? Would you feel good about him in run only downs tomorrow? I didn't think it was probably his worst game against the run. He's been really good against the run for the vast majority of the season, though. So I don't have a ton of concern on Rashan Gary in run defense in this game. But if he has another really bad game, then that's certainly going to hurt them. And so you definitely don't want to see that at any point in this one. Abe says, mark my words, Josh Jacobs is going to have a big game. I would not be surprised at that one bit whatsoever. Muhammad McLovin, I just wanted to say that I believe your patience is admirable answering all these Matt LaFleur questions this week or year. This is the playoffs, people. We are here to have fun. I agree. And I think the crazy thing is if they lose this game, as soon as Saturday or Sunday rolls around, it's a fair conversation. It's a fair conversation, but I feel like we're jumping the gun and jumping to conclusions a little bit before we even get there. And even then, I still think he's back, as I've talked about. Could Sullivan bring Hafley and Willis with him to Miami? Could. But again, we have no idea. Sometimes when you're closer to someone, you realize their deficiencies more. And maybe John Eric Sullivan says, yeah, I didn't see enough from Hafley, or yeah, Malik Willis was good, but I know what Matt LaFleur had to do to kind of scheme around some of his deficiencies that I don't know that that's the direction that I want to go in. Or maybe he was John Eric Sullivan. We have no idea. Maybe he was the one that was like, hey, Goody, go get Malik Willis. The guy's really good. And maybe it was John Eric Sullivan that was championing him the entire time. If that's the case, then yeah, you can bet he probably wants him in Miami too. And it just depends. We have no idea where he's at with some of the people within the Packers organization, but he certainly has a higher level of familiarity, which could either help those, evals a lot or, get them to Miami, or if he didn't like them, then maybe keep them farther away from Miami. You just never, ever quite know in those situations. Hot start to the game is going to be huge in this one. Yes, but Green Bay had a pretty great start and had a pretty big lead late in last game, and they did not take advantage of it. So you never quite know. Really excited for these games this weekend. Andy, where would you rank the NFC quarterbacks 1 through 7 going into the playoffs? All right. Stafford, Love. So Stafford, Love. So we have Hurts, Purdy, Bryce Young, Caleb Williams, and Sam Darnold. Oh man. Okay. Based on how they've played this year, I'll probably go Sam Darnold. I'm going to tie Brock Purdy and Caleb Williams. And then I'm going to go Jalen Hurts. And then I'm going to go Malik Willis. I'm going to go Malik Willis at number 7 ahead of Bryce Young. But I put Bryce Young 7 if I had to just take the starting quarterbacks. Chasing the Pack podcast. This is what we work towards all season. It's for the chance, no matter the roster. We are still the Green Bay Packers, and this is still Titletown, USA. Love the thought process, chasing the pack. All right, we did that one. Should the Packers rotate more defensive linemen? Yeah, they'll rotate those guys quite a bit, I would think, in this game to stay fresh. Travis, Colby Wooden's going to play a lot, but then you're going to see Brooks, you're going to see some Brinson. I would assume you're going to see some Jonathan Ford. I don't think Stackhouse will be active, but that'll be a choice that they have to make. I guess I take that back. I think he probably will be. That'll be an interesting decision, but either way, I think they'll rotate those guys a decent amount. But I think Wooden will definitely still play the most. What do you think the Packers need to do to win, run game or passing game? Does this defense need to play aggressive and risk more downfield plays? Yeah, I just think find a way to get turnovers, play aggressive on defense. I probably play aggressive on offense, but if you can stay balanced, that's still the 1A your goal for this one. It's turnover differential and it's stopping Chicago's run game. And if you can get to the quarterback too, that's an added bonus as well. Those are the big ones that I'm really concerned about. Again, turnovers, defensive run game, red zone offense is another one that's in there. But you just have to control those things better than you have against Chicago so far, at least in the last game, especially when it came to red zone offense. Robert, thank you for the super chat. Andy, if Green Bay wins, are any players on IR eligible to return for Seattle? I think Lloyd is. If it's not against Seattle, it's the game after that for Marshawn Lloyd. I'd have to go back and double check. Let's see. Friday, December 19th, which would have put it Bears, Ravens, Vikings. Yeah, so he'd be eligible. Marshawn Lloyd would be eligible to come back in that game. Whether he would or not, my guess is probably not. They're going to probably want to open the practice window for more than a week. And even if he was active, I'm not sure you're deactivating Emmanuel Wilson or, Chris Brooks for that. And certainly not Josh Jacobs. I think it would take all of a sudden Lloyd being like 100% fully healthy, fully good to go, and an injury to either Jacobs, Wilson, or Brooks in this game to have any chance of seeing Marshawn Lloyd this week. Beast Bumblebee, thank you for the super chat. Feels like we are in for a big Jacobs game. It's been a while since he's had a dominant game. Doesn't help getting hit in the backfield every snap. I think the offensive line is going to be better in this one. Jacobs has a good game. Jaden Reed's another one. I'm really watching Jaden Reed. I expect him to have a big game in this one as well. All right, where did I leave off? Andy, anything you can tell me to be not as nervous? Yeah, we went through some of those things already, but again, you should be nervous. Bears fans should also be nervous. This is not an easy game. It's a true coin flip. Either team can win. Everything's on the line. This is what's fun about sports. If we just knew Green Bay was going to win, it's fine, cool, Green Bay won, but it doesn't add the drama to it. If Chicago fans just knew Chicago was going to win, maybe they would take it too, but this is what makes it fun, is that this is a true coin flip toss-up game, and I can't wait to watch it. So the the most fun in sports is when you've got your stomach curdling in a billion different directions right at game time and through the game, where it means so much and it matters so much and everything's on the line. Whether it's been a Packers game, a Bucks game, a Brewers game, those have been my favorite. I've been to the point at times. I say it's my favorite. I've been to the point at times in games like that where I almost like question myself of like, is this fun? Am I even having fun anymore? I am so nervous and sick that I'm like, this can't be healthy. And is it even like fun? But that's why we invest so much time, effort, and energy into this, is because it's for those moments. It's for those, feelings of getting a win in those style of games. There's nothing like it. There's absolutely nothing like it. I would argue with you. This is going to be controversial. This is going to be extremely controversial. If Green Bay were to go on and win the Super Bowl, there might be a piece of you that's more elated and remembers more fondly the Packers win against the Bears than the Packers win in the Super Bowl. And the reason I say that is there is a little bit of like, hey, you won the Super Bowl. And then like the next day comes around and it's like, all right, let's get ready for 2026. Like, let's get ready for the offseason. Who's leaving? Who's coming? Like, there's obviously a celebration and things like that. And you're probably hungover the next day and whatnot. But there is a little bit of like, you win the Super Bowl and it's, oh, okay, let's turn the page. Let's get ready for next year. And you beat the Bears. It's like, all right, let's get ready for Seattle. Let's go right away. And like, you're celebrating that and you're ready for that another playoff game right away. And so there is almost right after a championship. For the Bucks, I know for me, I was at that game 6 in Milwaukee and it was awesome. And I'm like, Giannis is putting in 50 points and I'm tearing up at the end of the game because they're going to win the championship. And then like an hour later, I'm like, oh, all right. Yeah, let's, I wonder what the roster is going to look like next year. And you just kind of move on right away because it's just like, all right, well, the season's done now. So I do think there's something that's so special about these sort of games where everything is still on the line. It's a playoff moment and you just get, not only do you get the joy of beating them, but now you continue on in the playoffs and it's so fresh still. So again, I think sometimes the journey is greater than the end. And I think this is one of those moments. I'm not saying the Super Bowl would suck. I'm not saying it wouldn't be as fun. I'm not saying it wouldn't be amazing. I'm just saying sometimes these moments along the way, the NFC Championship game against the Falcons is probably a little bit like that for me in 2010. The Steelers game was unbelievable. I loved every second of it. I enjoyed it the entire night. If I'm thinking back of like which game I had the most fun and enjoyment in, like I probably would say the Falcons game. And if you're asking me which one I was the most gut-wrenching nervous for ahead of the game, it was probably the Bears game. So it's interesting sometimes how that works. And again, this is why we get so stoked and elated and excited for these type of games, just because they mean so freaking much and they're so fun. And like I said, just gut curdling in the moment. But if you get through it and you pick up a win, my God, does it feel amazing. Do you think we see any of the younger defensive linemen from last week? I'd like to see Sorrell get a few snaps. It's Sorrell versus Brenton Cox would be my guess. And Halfley said that Sorrell's got a chance to play in this game. I think there's a chance that Sorrell is active. Even if he is, again, we're talking 8 to 10, 8 to 12 snaps in this for Sorrell. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. But yeah, he could get active. We'll have to wait and see. And then, I would expect Jonathan Ford's going to be active in this game. I don't think Stackhouse is going to, but that's a true coin flip too, as to whether or not they activate him. If we're going through this, let's say they call up a tight end, because I think they're going to want 3 tight ends. I don't think they're going to want to go into this game with 2 tight ends. So they'll call up, probably either Dabney or Messiah Swinson for this one at tight end. That would mean that you're at a 54-man roster, which means you need to deactivate 6 players, but really it's only 5 because Desmond Ridder will be your emergency third quarterback. So probably Lucides Smith on the offensive line is 1. And then Colin Oliver would be 2. One of Brenton Cox or Barron Sorrell would be 3. I would assume like Jalen Simpson would be 4. And then you get down to, then I probably think at that point, you're probably going as Nasir Stackhouse as your 5th. That would be my guess, because I don't think you want to go down another corner. You're going to want Nick Neiman active did I say Wicks? Sorry. Wicks. And then Lucides Smith, Colin Oliver, one of the defensive ends, and Jalen Simpson. That would be my guess as your 5 inactives. So maybe, yeah. So that would be your 5 inactives. So yeah, I think that you could still see Stackhouse and get to 5 defensive tackles in this game. That would probably be my prediction for who's inactive in this one. Manifesting Matthew Golden's first touchdown tomorrow at Soldier Field in the playoffs. Let's do it. Andy, it's time for the Packers to win 4 games in a row, starting with trashing the Bears tomorrow night. Please, I would gladly take that. All right, let's cut a couple more Super Bowl or Super chats in here. Excuse me. I hope they're Super Bowl chats. We went over Beasts. You've spoken into existence with Justice about Hafley not having any teams interested in interviewing him. To be clear, I just was surprised that we hadn't heard any of it yet. But yes, now there's like 4 or 5 teams that are interviewing him. And I don't know if I spoke it into existence, but it definitely did happen as soon as we talked about it. What do you think Green Bay's defensive blitz rate is tomorrow night? I think it's high. I think it's pretty high. And some of it might be where they like bring a corner on a blitz, but drop a defensive end on the other side. So it's really still four guys coming. And then, how you want to determine a blitz is a little bit more, sort of in the eye of the beholder on that. But I think Jeff Hafley's going to be very creative, a lot of simulated pressure, a lot of actual pressure. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how he goes about doing that. But I don't think he's going to sit back and just do 4-man rush all day. San Antonio, Texas, checking in, having some tacos for Andy this week. Let's go, Pack, go. What kind of tacos, Flex? Or what are we talking here? I'm a big flour tortilla guy. I'm white boy tacos all day long. I can do the corn tortillas, but I'm a big flour tortilla guy. Everything else I'm pretty good with. I'm not a guacamole guy, not a sour cream guy, but whatever we can do authentic, tacos. Even again, if we have to do the corn tortillas, it's fine. Little cilantro, little, chopped onion in there. I'm cool with that. If we want to do the white boy tacos with all the cheese and the salsa and the lettuce and things like that, I can do that too. Big taco fan. Big taco fan. It's no Luige's Pizza, but it's good. You do to lose faith in another player like you did Quay last year could use a boost. So I lost all faith in Rashan Gary, I think. So let's get that Rashan Gary boost going this week in that case. How do you decide which stats to use when discussing a player's ability? I know you use PFF grades a lot. A lot of folks I listen to have been using EPA per play DVOA. I do my own grades, primarily Smooterino. I trust my own eyes. As I've talked about a lot of times, I'll give you PFF's grades as well, especially because, again, I think if you can get my grades and PFF grades, then it starts to tell a little bit more of a story to independent people grading the Packers in different ways. And if there are things that connect, all right, great. If they're disconnect, well, then again, you be the judge of who's right in that situation. But no, one of the things that I've talked about is I try not to dig into too many other people's things or listen to other podcasts or read other articles. I really try to let my eyes do the talking so that what I'm saying to you guys is organic and original and it's true and it's from the heart and it's not spun in any direction. It's just what I see on tape. And am I going to get everything right? Hell no. I'm going to get stuff wrong. But it's going to be authentic. It's going to be real. It's going to be what I see. And that's what you're going to get every single time. So I tend to again, I'm watching every player on every play and evaluating it for a reason. And it's not for the grades article. It's not for the grades video. It's so that I can speak educatedly on how players are playing, how they're trending, who's trending up, who's trending down. And so I'm trusting my own eyes and what I'm seeing on tape on every player and every play all season long since 2017. I've been doing it. So that's really what I lean on. I do not have an idea of how much Andy Reid gets paid per year. Maybe a Google search would help me there, but no, I don't know off the top of my head. LVN 2-sack day in Chicago. I could see that actually. If you told me somebody had a 2-sack day tomorrow, I would probably put money on LVN. I'd probably put money on Enagbare second, but I would probably put money on LVN. The coaching staff creates the game plan. What are the major areas of focus they play for? I.e. scripted plays, time management, player rotation, all of it, Packer Aggie. I can't stress enough how meticulous this is of how much they plan for every scenario, every situation. They've got game plans for if they're behind the sticks, if they're behind in the game, if they need to pass their way back into it, if they're, 5 minute, and trying to bleed the clock. They've got plans for everything. So there's certain things. If there's a couple new plays that they want to install that they'll work on through the course of the week, they'll work on some of their base stuff. They'll go through their scripted plays at the beginning. There's certain things that they'll spend more time focusing on, but man, they're going to have their I's dotted and T's crossed, especially when it comes to postseason football. How did I start grading players? Did you go through any training ahead of time? I went through scouting training through Sports Management Worldwide, as well as National Football Post had a scouting training at the time, which helped a little bit. And then I kind of adapted PFF's grading system to my own. I actually did a little bit of it even before I started doing it when I did it for my own site, sconnysports.com way back in the day. So I did some of it back then as well. But a lot of it is just stuff that I've taught myself and that I've read about and that I've spent time watching seminars on and that I went through the scouting classes for, and then just kind of an amalgamation of information. And then you go and you sit down. And I will say this too. If you had almost just an elementary understanding of football and you watched every player on every play, you'd be able to glean a lot. You'd get a lot of stuff wrong. Don't get me wrong, but you would get a lot of information from just watching every player on every play. So again, you could just tell who's trending up, who's trending down, who's missing tackles, who's, covering well, who's covering poorly, who gets away with some stuff, who doesn't get away with stuff. Like you would be shocked at how much you would take away just if you did that your own study every single week. And then the grades are just a bonus on top of it to quantify what my eyes are seeing on tape. If the Green Bay job were to open up, I don't think it will. Would that become the number one job opening in the NFL? I do think it would. That would be my guess. Buffalo would be very sought after if that came open. But if Buffalo opens, Buffalo and Green Bay are probably close. But even then, Green Bay's had better stability over the course of time. Josh Allen, though, is very tempting. So it'd either be Buffalo or Green Bay. But if Buffalo doesn't come available, I absolutely think Green Bay's the number one gig. Like others, I too expect the running game to take over if Jacobs is running hard. It'd be great. You also feeling nervous about Ben Johnson getting a third crack at the defense, considering how they moved the ball against the Packers last game? Feels like a chance the Bears put up 35 points. I feel the exact same way about that as I do about Matt LaFleur after seeing what the offense had the ability to do these last two games in Chicago. And Green Bay arguably executed better than Chicago did for the vast majority of those two games. So I think both of these offensive coordinators are very much at an advantage. But guess what? Dennis Allen and Jeff Hafley, they ain't folding over. They're going to have their A games ready too. And Dennis Allen's going to change things up on what he's done in front of those first two games. And Jeff Hafley's going to change things up on what he's done. And I would expect that everyone is doing everything they can to try to get a win in this one. And I think all of those little matchups and intricacies are going to be very, very fun to watch. Stranger Things is 1,000,000,000% worth starting. I think it's a ton of fun. Now, for me, as somebody who grew up in the, I don't want to say when I was born, but I grew up in the early 90s. So, a lot of the stuff that happens takes place in the 80s, but it has such a similar feeling to me of when I grew up in the early 90s that there's a lot of just like it even just with it being the time frame and then also just how it feels to grow up as a kid. I think it nails better than any other show I've seen. So I think it's worth it even for that. You don't even have to care about the supernatural stuff for I think it to be a really good show. And if you like the supernatural stuff, well, then even better. How about I get a Sorrell James Harrison comparison? Sure, I would take that, but I think that's probably a little bit aggressive. Andy, I'm pessimistic about this matchup. Give me hope. Why and how can the Packers win? Yeah, we went over this a couple times, Marina, already, but Green Bay's offense should have a ton of opportunity to take advantage of a very bad Chicago defense. Turnovers are going to play a huge part. Josh Jacobs is healthy and ready for this game. Packers offensive line has been playing better as of late. Jeff Hafley shut down that Bears offense in a pretty significant way. Chicago had opportunities, but held them to 9 points through the first 58 minutes of that game. There's every reason. Green Bay was the better team through 120 minutes of the game, of the two games, no questions asked. So yeah, Green Bay has every right to go in and win this game. I don't know if Harbaugh was running out of ideas. I just think sometimes you do get stale. McCarthy got stale in Green Bay. Even Belichick got stale in New England. It does happen at times. That's why I said at some point, even if you're pissed at me now for not wanting to fire Matt LaFleur now, like give me a couple of years. It's going to come eventually. Like everyone wears out their welcome at some point in time. You get hired in this league to get fired. And so I don't think we're close to that point. I shouldn't say we're not, to me, in that point with Matt now, but it's probably coming around the corner. Like that stuff just happens. You outstay your welcome. And it's a weird dynamic in sports, but it is what it is. Now, if Matt picks up a Super Bowl win this year, next year, well, then he's going to buy himself some serious time. But more often than not, it's really tough to stay in one place for any real significant period of time. How long did it take Howard and Reed to win their first Super Bowl? 13 years. You might be right, Rich. I'd have to go and dig into that further. Yeah, I think he's a good coach. If you told me that, again, they fired Matt, he's probably somewhere in the top 3 to 4 of my coaching, candidates at that point. I'd have to go and look at it closer, but he's a good coach. But again, I would not fire Matt to get to John. Keep doing that. Go Pack Go. I can't wait to see Ben Johnson trying to explain how playing his guys last week didn't give them the worst odds to win this game. Hopefully they turn on the Packers heat on their sidelines. Yeah, that would be nice if Green Bay actually had heat in this one. Special teams being better caught my ear for Harbaugh. All right, fair enough. Yeah, again, we've talked about the Matt LaFleur thing a billion times over by now. Pay Harbaugh whatever he wants to be special teams coordinator. I don't see that happening, but he would certainly find a way to help the special teams. All right, friends, I thought we only had a few more chats in here, but we've got about 100 more, I want to say, and I definitely don't have time for that. I'll get to a few more super chats, then I do have to get out of here. Let's see. Travis says, I hope the Packers aren't predictable on fourth downs. I don't care how predictable or unpredictable it is. They just have to convert. Listen, they've done jet sweeps on fourth downs. People don't like that. They've done the inside handoffs, inside zone on fourth down. People don't like that. I've seen they ran the play with Malik Willis on third down where they're trying to sneak the tight end into the flat, which they've had a ton of success on. That didn't work. People didn't like that. I don't care if they pass. I don't care if they run. I don't care if they're running out of shotgun under center, bootlegging, read option. I don't care what it is. Find a way and find a play to be successful on those third and fourth and short, fourth down situations, because those ultimately could easily be the difference in this game. Mike Wall gave you accolades in one of your episodes on your ability to look at tape and see pretty much everything. It is impressive, Andy. Go Pack Go. I'm not going to lie. That was a really cool moment. There's always a level, whether, wherever I think I'm at with doing this, there's always a level I think that I can get to that's further. I always want to learn more, understand more. And there's always just a little bit of my last football game that I played was in 6th grade. Tackle football game I played was in 6th grade. So I didn't lace them up. I didn't play quarterback in college. I didn't play in anything like that. So there's always that little bit in the back of your mind of you're talking about a game and you didn't actually spend time playing it for the vast majority of your life. So there's always that piece of it. And for him to say that was really, really cool. And it really meant a lot to me, to be totally transparent. All right, a couple more. If you had the option of re-signing Quay or using the money to sign, I would probably not re-sign Quay at this point in time. I think you have to be careful. I did not like what I saw out of Tyron Hopper in this one at all, in this last game against Minnesota. It gave me some real nervousness if he's going to be the guy moving forward, but I think you have to handle those situations separately. And right now, giving that money to Quay, I would be a little hesitant on. No one honestly expects the Bears to turn on the heating. It's called gamesmanship, people. It is what it is. Yeah, it's also not allowed. So I think I honestly think there was probably just a malfunction in that game. The NFL does need to figure that out, where if one side isn't working, then the other side can't work either. They do need to figure that out. Go Pack and F the Bears. Sergeant Danielson, I appreciate you a ton, and thank you for one last super chat. I'm going to get out of here. I will have a preview show for you tomorrow morning. Live pregame show, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. I'll do kind of a little bit of a watch along with the early game. If Rams Panthers is close, we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one as well, and do a little bit of a watch along. If it's a blowout and either team is winning big, probably the Rams, then we probably won't talk about it as much. But 5:30 p.m. Central Time pregame show, a little bit before kickoff. We'll go up till about hour 15, hour 20, hour 25 minutes for the pregame show tomorrow. And then halftime show on the Luiges Pizza channel, and live post-game show right here on YouTube as soon as the game is done, as we're celebrating a Packers victory over the Chicago Bears. Enjoy your last non-game day here before the game tomorrow, I should say. And then enjoy game day tomorrow. We'll have that episode up for you at 5 a.m. tomorrow, earlier for members. And then pregame show, 5:30 p.m. Central Time. I'll see you guys there. Enjoy your night. Until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.